Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Voice podcast. I'm Vernon R.E. Jones, managing broker, owner of Jones Homes, and for 30 years, we have serviced the 7-county Denver metro area. The age-old question, is it better to buy than to rent? Well, basically, owning a home was cheaper than renting in all 50 top U.S. markets. When potential first-time home buyers consider making the transition to home ownership, they ask themselves whether it makes more financial sense to keep renting or to buy. The pandemic has undoubtedly impacted that calculation. Annual house price appreciation skyrocketed during the pandemic, reaching an average of 17+% annual growth in the second quarter of 2021, as demand for homes continued to outpace supply. When your home pays you, it makes more sense to buy than to rent. Growth in rent prices, which had slowed down in 2020 as rental demand fell, came roaring back in the second quarter of this year. The median rent in the U.S. jumped 4% between the first and second quarters of 2021, the highest quarter-over-quarter pace in 7 years. For potential first-time homebuyers making the calculation, how has the monthly cost of renting versus owning a home changed in the second quarter of 2021? This is sort of like breaking down the cost to own. What goes into the monthly cost of renting or owning? The cost to rent is relatively straightforward. It is the amount of rent paid by the tenant every month. The cost of owning, on the other hand, is made up of multiple pieces: taxes, repairs, homeowner's insurance, and the monthly mortgage principal and interest payment, and possibly private mortgage insurance or mortgage insurance to cover the lender if you default. Consider a hypothetical first-time homebuyer taking out, on the average, a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage in the second quarter of 21 with a 5% down payment on a home at the 25th percentile sale price. Basically, we're using the 25th percentile because first-time homebuyers are much more likely to buy a less expensive home. After accounting for the total monthly homeownership cost and comparing with the median rent by market, renting was a better financial choice in 35 out of the top 50 markets in the second quarter of 2021. Some of the markets where it was better to rent include Boston, Chicago, Dallas. It was better to own in such markets as Atlanta, St. Louis, Miami. This calculation, however, leaves out the main benefit of owning over renting: the accumulation of equity. Once that's added, that's where you get the number where buying versus renting, it just leaves renting in the dust. Let's just talk about the wealth-generating effect of home ownership. For those trying to buy a home, rapid house appreciation can be intimidating. It makes the purchase price or the purchase of the home more expensive. However, once the home is purchased, appreciation helps build equity in the home and becomes a benefit rather than a cost. When accounting for the appreciation benefit in our rent versus own analysis, it was cheaper to own in every one of the top 50 markets, as I said previously, including the two most expensive rental markets, San Francisco and San Jose, California, where it was more affordable to rent in 2020. I would say to people, in the second quarter, the monthly home ownership cost was also negative in every market. How is that possible? How in the second quarter is the monthly home ownership cost be negative? Well, when the benefit of appreciation is large enough to offset all other home ownership costs, the result is a net gain to the homeowner. In other words, the home pays you to live in it. Consider a potential first-time home buyer in Dallas, where home prices sat near the median of the top 50 markets. And if the home buyer puts a 5% down payment on a $243,000 home, again, the 25th percentile home price in the second quarter, and again, we're dealing with first-time home buyers here, with a mortgage rate of 3%, the home buyer would have paid roughly $974 in principal, interest, mortgage insurance, plus an estimated $749 in taxes, repairs, and homeowners insurance costs. That brings the home buyer's total monthly cost of ownership to around $1,700. The average house price in Dallas increased 17.5% year over year in the second quarter of 2021, which is in line with the national pace and equates to an equity benefit of approximately $3,550 a month. If the pace remains the same, the resulting total monthly cost is negative. In other words, minus $1,820 or a net gain compared with the median monthly cost of rent in Dallas, which is around $1,300. It made much more financial sense to buy rather than rent in the second quarter. So when I sit there and talk about the negative, when I say the net gain, that's what we're talking about. Sounds hard to believe, but it is true. Will the rent versus own dynamic change? Well, at times it does change in various markets for various reasons. Though mortgage rates have pulled back in recent weeks, they're expected to rise in the future, and that will mean higher monthly payments for the same loan amount. House price appreciation will likely remain elevated in the coming months, but eventually it will moderate from the pace we saw in the second quarter of this year. Nonetheless, the analysis demonstrates that the wealth building effect of home equity is a powerful factor in the homeownership decision. When your home pays you, it makes much more sense to buy than to rent. And we haven't even discussed the tax write-offs for your interest and your property taxes. So, we haven't even discussed that. So, another advantage. The rent versus buy analysis compares rent with the cost of home ownership in the 50 largest metropolitan areas. Median rent is derived from a 2020 American Community Survey microdata. Home sale prices, property tax rate, and house price appreciation by market are derived from a company called First American Data and Analytics Data, which is a wide-ranging and very well-respected analytics company. The monthly cost of ownership is calculated for mortgage payment, interest, taxes, and insurance, PITI, assuming a down payment of 5% and an interest rate of 3%. I get asked a lot by people who ask me this question all the time, and I always say, even in a down market, it is good to buy. But again, there are so many factors affecting home price appreciation, such as the labor market. The labor market's good. People are going to be moving there. Homes are going to be in higher demand, and supply will probably dwindle, which is kind of like the standard process that we're dealing with now. But if you got a bad labor market, not a lot of jobs, home prices will suffer. So I always tell people, think about the labor market when you think about buying, as that does affect the pace of home price appreciation. Because if you got a lot of people wanting to buy, those home prices will go up. Not a lot of people wanting to buy, those home prices will go down. Hope you gained some knowledge about the rent to buy question. And if you have any other questions, feel free to give us a call. I'm Vernon. I can be reached at 303-359-8218. And again, thank you for listening to the Real Estate Voice podcast. As always, please be safe.